It's a night in Laconia, somewhere in the late 5th century BC, a farm at the edge of a village whose name has not survived. A man is walking home in the dark. He is a helot. He is strong enough that the village remembers him, strong enough that his neighbors look to him in arguments and in trouble. He has worked the same fields his grandfather worked. He has never owned them. He never will. He doesn't see the boy waiting in the olive grove. The boy is 18, maybe 19. He has been hiding in this part of the country for weeks now, sleeping in ditches, drinking from streams, eating what he can take from the same farms he watches. He is Spartan. He has been trained for this since he was 7 years old. He carries no spear, no shield, no armor, only a short iron knife and a length of rope. The man passes. The boy moves. What happens next is over in less than a minute. There is no struggle worth describing. The knife is small, but the boy has been taught exactly where to put it. The body is dragged off the path. The boy washes the blade in a stream and is gone before the moon shifts. In the morning, the village will find the man. They will know what happened. They will not say a word. They will bury him without a name on the stone, because to say his name aloud would be to admit who killed him, and you do not admit such things in Laconia. You bury and you go back to the fields. This was not a murder, not under Spartan law. The boy had committed no crime. He had passed a test. This was the Krypteia, the hidden ones, the most disciplined killers the Greek world ever produced, and the only state-organized program of secret murder we have a name for from the ancient world. We know they existed. We know how they were chosen. We know roughly what they were sent out to do. What we don't know, what no one knows, is the names of any of the people they killed. Across 2, perhaps 3 centuries of killing, not one name comes down to us, only the institution, only the silhouette of it, in a few short passages by writers who were already disturbed by what they were describing. Sparta did not begin as the place we now picture. There was a time before the agoge, before the black soup and the long hair, when Sparta was an ordinary Greek polis on the southern Peloponnese. Then, sometime in the 8th century BC, Sparta did something the other Greek cities did not do. It conquered its neighbor. Messenia lay just over the mountains to the west. Fertile, populated, agricultural, Sparta took it in a war that lasted 20 years. Then it took it again a generation later when the Messenians revolted. And this time, instead of selling the defeated into slavery overseas, the Greek standard, Sparta did something stranger. It kept them. The entire population of Messenia, along with the conquered Laconians who had already been reduced to serfdom, became helots, state slaves. They were not owned by individual Spartan masters. They were owned by Sparta itself. They could not be freed except by the state. They could not be killed for sport, though, as we will see, the state found other arrangements for their killing, and there were a great many of them. The numbers are uncertain, and the ancients themselves disagreed, but the rough consensus is something like this. By the 5th century BC, the helots may have outnumbered the Spartan citizens by 7 to 1. Some estimates run higher. For every armed and trained Spartan, 7 people worked the fields, who remembered their own conquest, who passed down stories of who they used to be, whose grandfathers had fought and lost and were not allowed to leave. This was the situation Sparta lived inside, every day, for roughly 300 years. Everything Sparta became: the agoge, the obsession with discipline, the refusal to build city walls, the warrior ideology, the famous black soup, the rejection of luxury, the strange constitution with its 2 kings and its 5 ephors. Everything grew out of one fundamental problem. Sparta was a small armed minority sitting on top of a large unarmed majority that hated them. The Spartans knew this. They were not stupid. The historian Thucydides, who watched Sparta closely and who liked them more than he liked Athens, wrote that most of Spartan policy was, at bottom, designed with the helots in mind. Their training, their secrecy, their reluctance to send armies far from home, all of it was the conduct of a society that was, in its own way, permanently at war. But you cannot keep a population of that size obedient through soldiers alone. You can crush a revolt once it begins. You cannot stop one from beginning. For that, Sparta developed something else, a way to kill the people most likely to start a revolt. Before the revolt began, a Spartan boy left his mother's house at the age of 7. He did not return. From that day, the state owned him. He went to the agoge. This was not a school in any sense we would recognize. It was a system of competitive deprivation, designed to produce soldiers who feared nothing, because nothing in adult life could match what childhood had already done to them. He slept on reeds, he cut himself. He was given 1 cloak a year, regardless of season. He was kept hungry on purpose and was expected to steal food to survive. But if he was caught stealing, he was beaten. Not for stealing, for being caught. There was a logic to that rule, and it was not the one the Spartans told their children. The stealing was not just discipline, it was rehearsal. A boy who could move through a village unseen, who could take what he needed without leaving a trace, who could survive on land that was not his. That was a boy you could send out one day to do something darker. The agoge was not preparing soldiers for the phalanx. The phalanx was the easy part. The agoge was preparing them for what came before any phalanx ever marched. He was taught to fight. He was taught to kill. He was taught to obey. He was taught to keep his mouth shut and to answer with as few words as possible, the trait we still call laconic after the region. By the time he was 18, he had been through 11 years of this. He had killed animals. He had hunted. He had been beaten and had beaten others. He had watched the older boys do the same things he was about to do. And then, if he was among the best, strongest, most disciplined, most ruthless, he was selected for the Krypteia. The word means the hidden ones, from the same root as crypto, as cryptic. It describes both what they were and what they did. They moved in secret. They lived in secret. The institution itself was secret in the sense that the Spartans did not advertise it to outsiders. The Athenian writer Xenophon, who lived in Sparta and wrote a long, admiring account of its customs, somehow forgot to mention the Krypteia at all. What we know comes mostly from Plutarch, writing 5 centuries later, and from a fragment of Aristotle that Plutarch preserves. Plutarch writes that the magistrates of Sparta would periodically send out the most discerning of the young men into the countryside, equipped with daggers and basic supplies. By day they hid themselves. By night they came out, and they killed any helot they came across. Sometimes, Plutarch adds, they would go further. They would walk into the fields during daylight and murder the strongest and the best of the helots at their work. He does not pause on that sentence. He moves past it. This is one of the small details that tells you what the institution actually was. The killings were not random. They were targeted at the most able-bodied helots, the leaders, the strong young men, the ones who would, if a revolt came, be the ones organizing it. The Krypteia was, in modern terms, a counterinsurgency program. It was designed to remove the potential leadership of a rebellion that had not yet happened. It worked by anticipating who might one day become dangerous and killing them before they became so. These are the kinds of details that don't make it into the version of Sparta most of us grew up with. The 300, the speeches, the helmets. The actual machinery of the place sits underneath all of that, and it takes time to dig out. If the way I move through this is something you want more of, the subscribe button is how I find you again. Then we go back to the boy in the olive grove, because we still don't know what his year actually looked like. The Krypteia year, as best we can reconstruct it, went like this. The ephors, Sparta's 5 elected magistrates who held more power than the kings on most questions of state, would announce, at the start of each year of office, a formal declaration of war on the helots. This was a religious act. Killing a person in Sparta was murder. Killing an enemy in war was not. By declaring war annually on the helots, the state turned every helot in Laconia and Messenia into a legitimate target. No pollution attached to their deaths. No god was offended. The young men sent out into the countryside were not assassins. They were soldiers. In a war the helots did not know was happening to them. The selected young men, the number is unknown, probably small, probably the elite of each year's class, were sent out alone or in pairs. They were given a dagger and basic provisions. They were told not to be seen. They were told to live off the land, which in practice meant stealing from the helot farms they were also hunting from. They walked the country roads. They learned the rhythms of the villages. They watched the fields. They identified the men who mattered, who was respected, who was strong, who was angry, who was speaking too much. Then they moved. There is no record of how many died this way. The number, across centuries, would have been substantial. The helot population remained large. The killings were not designed to reduce the population, only to remove its dangerous edges. A pruning, in effect, done with a knife at night on the road home. The young Spartan, after his year, returned to the city. He was now a full citizen. He had completed the final test of the agoge. He took his place in the assembly, in the mess hall, in the army. He had killed at least one man, probably more, on the state's instruction, with no record, no witnesses, no funeral that named the dead. He would never speak of it. That was part of the test, too. Now go back to the olive grove. The boy waiting there is not a sociopath. He is a product. He has been told, since he could understand language, that the helots are the enemy of Sparta, that they hate his family, that if the order ever broke, they would come into Spartan houses and kill Spartan children, including the children he might one day have. He has been told that what he is doing tonight is a kind of preemptive defense. He has been told, by every adult he has ever known, that this is correct. He has also been told that the man he is about to kill is dangerous. He has watched him for weeks. He has seen the way the other helots in the village defer to him. He has noted the slight straightness of the man's back, the steadiness in his voice when other men get loud. The boy has been trained to read these signs. The killing, when it comes, is quick because the boy has been taught to make it quick. There is nothing personal in it. He does not know the man's name. He will never know it. The man has a wife. He may have children. The boy does not think about these things. He has been trained not to. When it is over, he washes the blade. He walks away. He sleeps somewhere in the hills. This is what a year of the Krypteia looked like, multiplied across young men, across decades, across 2 and possibly 3 centuries of Spartan history. By the most conservative estimate, thousands of people died this way. By less conservative ones, many more. Not one of them has a name in the historical record. There is one moment in the history of Sparta and the helots that stands above the others. It is preserved by Thucydides, who is not a sentimental writer and who does not give his sources, and it goes like this. At some point during the Peloponnesian War, in the 420s BC, the Spartans were worried about helot loyalty. They were fighting Athens. The army was overstretched. The helots, sensing weakness, were a danger. So the Spartans announced a reward. They proclaimed that any helot who had distinguished himself in service to Sparta, any helot who had fought bravely on Sparta's behalf, who had performed difficult work, who had shown courage and merit, should come forward. They would be examined. The best of them, the ones whose service had been most outstanding, would be granted their freedom. 2,000 helots came forward. They were the elite of the helot population, the strongest, the most accomplished, the most ambitious. The men who in any other society would have been the ones the state most wanted to keep alive. They were given garlands in the Greek custom for those being honored. They were taken through the temples. Greek custom required it. A man being granted freedom had to be dedicated to the gods, his new status witnessed by the divine. The Spartans walked the 2,000 helots through the holiest sites in Laconia, garlands on their heads, the procession moving from altar to altar in the proper order. The gods, presumably, were watching. And then, in Thucydides' own words, they disappeared. Not one of them was ever seen again. No one knew, he writes, in what manner each of them perished. This was the institution showing its full shape. The Krypteia's individual killings multiplied. The same logic, identify the dangerous, remove them, applied at scale, with the additional refinement of using the reward as a filter. The men who stepped forward were not random helots. They were the ones with enough confidence, enough sense of their own worth to believe they deserved freedom. Sparta found them in one move and killed them in the next. How exactly they were killed, no one ever recorded, Thucydides asked. He could not find out. 24 centuries later, we still do not know. What stays with you isn't the cruelty of it. It is the patience. The rest of Greece knew. The institution was not as secret as Sparta liked to pretend. Athenian writers mocked Spartan customs constantly, and the Krypteia, in a fragmented form, appears in their work. The 2000 helots story was told by an Athenian historian and read by educated Greeks across the Mediterranean. No one intervened. There are reasons for this, and none of them are flattering. The first is that slavery was normal in the Greek world. Athens kept slaves. Corinth kept slaves. Thebes kept slaves. Slave killings were unremarkable. What made the Spartan case strange was the scale and the systematization, not the killing itself. The second reason is that the helots, by every account, did not look or speak like a separate people. They were Greek. They worshipped the same gods. But to other Greeks, they had been conquered. Conquest, in the Greek mind, justified itself. A people that had been beaten was a people who had failed to win. Their condition was their own fault. You could feel this attitude in Plato, in Aristotle, in Xenophon, men who otherwise spent their lives writing about justice. The third reason is simpler. Sparta was strong. Sparta had the best army in Greece. You did not pick fights with Sparta over an internal matter, especially not over the treatment of people the rest of Greece had already agreed not to care about. So the killings continued. For generations. For so long that no one alive in Sparta remembered a time without them. It ended slowly, and then all at once. In 464 BC, a great earthquake struck Laconia. The Spartan city was flattened. Thousands of citizens died. The helots, sensing the moment, rose. They fled to Mount Ithome, the old refuge of their ancestors, the high ground in Messenia where their grandfathers had held out in the wars of conquest. From the mountain, they fought. The Spartans, the great soldiers, could not take it. The siege went on for years. Some sources say 4, some say 10. The revolt was so large and so dangerous that Sparta was forced to ask Athens for help, the only time in their history they did so. When the helots on Ithome finally surrendered, they were allowed to leave the Peloponnese. Athens took them in and gave them a city on the Corinthian Gulf. Their grandchildren would help destroy Sparta a century later. Sparta survived the revolt. The institution went on. In 371 BC, the Theban general Epaminondas defeated the Spartan army at the Battle of Leuctra. He then did what no Greek leader had done before. He marched into the Peloponnese, walked into Messenia, and freed the helots there. He did more than free them. He gave them back their land, helped them rebuild a city, Messene, with walls of cut stone, walls so massive that parts of them still stand today. The Krypteia ended with that. Without Messenia, the helot population shrank. Without the helot population, the institution had no purpose. Sparta itself began to decline, and within a few generations was a tourist attraction. Roman visitors came to watch Spartan boys be whipped at religious ceremonies, a degraded echo of what the agoge had once been. The killings stopped. The killers were forgotten. The killed had already been forgotten while they were still alive. If you go to Messene today, you can walk the walls Epaminondas built. They are still there. They run for miles, taller than a man, fitted stone on stone. Inside them, the streets of the old city are still visible in the grass. The marketplace, the theater, the fountain house. The people who lived inside those walls were the grandchildren of helots, the first free generation in 300 years. They built a city while their grandfathers were still alive to see it. A few hours' walk away, In what was once Sparta, there is almost nothing left. A few stones, a theater. The Spartans, true to themselves, never built monuments. They did not believe in walls. They believed their citizens were the walls. When the citizens were gone, there was nothing to find. What survives in the end is what the helots built, not what was built on top of them. This is the shape of one ancient society's hidden machinery, one institution in one corner of the Greek world that we happen to know about because 2 or 3 writers, centuries apart, decided to record what was happening there. Most civilizations were not so lucky in their historians. Most of what the ancient world did to the people inside it was never written down at all. The histories we have are the ones that survived the silence. The ones that didn't, whose Krypteias and Messenias and 2,000 helots vanished without a Thucydides to count them, are still out there, in fragments, in mounds, in walls no one alive remembers building. Those are the stories that come next.